So a lot of people have come to me and said, I need to work out. I need to get in shape. I need to lose 20
Right.
pounds. And then during our consultation, by the end of it, pretty much 9 times out of 10, and the only reason it's 9 is because this one client had already been working with her PCP, who's low carb, and was
Cool.
helping her with the food. But basically, everybody else realizes that food is more of an issue than working out. That they either have an addiction to certain foods or food additives, or they have shame around their relationship with food, and that's way more of an issue than just like doing jumping jacks or pumping iron.
Welcome to the Protecting Your Nest podcast, where we explore the many ways to optimize metabolic health by addressing its root causes. I'm your host, Dr. Hampton, and today we're thrilled to welcome Amelia Wood, a dynamic leader in both the event and health industries. Amelia brings over 20 years of experience in creative production, nonprofit fundraising, and event design. But what's truly inspiring is how she's channeled that creativity into helping others transform their metabolic health. As a founder of Primitive Pulse Fitness and an ACE certified personal trainer and metabolic health coach, Amelia empowers her clients to overcome barriers to health through functional fitness, whole food nutrition, and community building. She's also sharing the metabolic message with her new YouTube channel in partnership with Dr. Fume. And I'm going to make sure to have a link to that channel in the video notes. In this episode, we'll dive into her unique journey, her coaching philosophy, and how her holistic approach aligns the mind, body, and culture to create sustainable health and habits. So whether you're seeking inspiration or practical tools to improve your well-being, this episode is for you. Amelia, I appreciate you. I enjoyed being on your YouTube channel, your new YouTube channel. In fact, you may want to say something about that before we begin, but thank you for coming to this episode.
Thanks for having me. Yeah. Our podcast on YouTube is called The Magic of Metabolic Health. Excuse me. And yeah, we're brand new. We're babies at this, but the more the merrier, right?
Yes,
I
I love
am
it.
a Gen Xer, borderline millennial. I always joke about that. And my podcast co-host, Dr. Fumi Awayami, she is a solid millennial. So we both have a lot of things in common, and we just try and make it fun and entertaining and informative to help people understand that metabolic health is attainable. Optimizing your health is accessible no matter where you
That's
are,
right.
who you are, or where you come from.
Yes, and from the moment I met you guys at the Symposium for Metabolic Health, I knew that fun was part of the story because you guys had a lot of energy, and we need energy and excitement because it's so exciting to restore your health. Who wouldn't want to do that? And that energy is partly because you guys restored your metabolic health. And I'm not sure who you were before that happened, but that's a beautiful, inspiring thing. I actually had a patient today in clinic who gave a compliment, and they said, Doc, you kind of look like you're healthy. So I actually believe everything you're saying. So, and that's a beautiful compliment. So I really appreciated that. And I appreciate you guys. And again, let's start our conversation by you sharing, how your background in event planning, event production, and creative design led you to become a metabolic health coach. I mean, those things don't necessarily sound like they're connected.
You're right. And I was just sharing this story with someone yesterday, actually. The short version is I've been in the entertainment industry my whole life. I basically was born an actor. That's just who I am. I tried to deny it, and it just kept coming back as opportunities. And I'm a good actor. And so I created a production company several times with several different people. And then I started my own about 10 years ago. And fast forward to the pandemic, uh, everybody was doing home workout videos and parodies of songs about the pandemic and COVID and all these things. And I've been doing that stuff without the technology since I was a wee one, right? I would use a camcorder or something junky and big and awkward, and I still have it buried in my bookshelf, because I never digitized it, sort of thing. So nowadays, this is accessible to people. You can make stuff, put it up online in seconds. And so
That's right.
during the pandemic, I made a parody video,
Mm.
a parody workout video, and the host was actually Freddie Mercury from
Mm.
the band Queen.
Wow.
And I made fun of the workout videos in that video because I didn't really work out. It was more of a mustache workout. So Freddie's known for his mustache. He's also
No
known for
doubt.
his teeth. I happen to have prosthetic Freddie Mercury teeth. So I used that. I put on my mustache, my wig, my workout gear that's very Freddie Mercury-esque. And I did this really silly mustache warm up. I had a mic. I did like a mic warm up. And I did it just like everyone else was doing it, like 10 reps, 3 times, 30 seconds each, or whatever. And I put it up on YouTube, and I kind of forgot about it. But while I was doing other videos, I also did one, believe it or not, as Prince, how to properly wash your hands,
Mm.
silly things like that. And I thought one day, what if you could hire Freddie Mercury to come train you? Like if he
Mm.
was a legitimate, certified personal trainer, wouldn't that be more fun to get in shape and work out and get healthy with a rock star
Mm.
who's,
Of course.
deceased, but really fun guy? He can sing at you, with you. Um, he'll come to your house. And so this idea sort of spiraled into a lot of other ideas. But later that spring, this was in 2021, I became certified as an ACE personal trainer, and that's American Council on Exercise. And when I started looking for clients, I got a little intimidated. I was like, I don't know if people are going to take me seriously. Maybe I
Mm-hmm.
should just start as me, as Amelia. I can come to your home. I can do virtual work with you. And so I did. I came up with a business name, Primitive Pulse Fitness, and now, however many years later, 3 or 4 years later, I'm thinking of bringing back my original idea to
Mm-hmm.
fuse entertainment with this health. So it's still a big part of my life. I still run my other business as an entertainer, but I'm also, like, really passionate about making metabolic health more accessible and more just common knowledge and common words, just the word metabolic, um, in our everyday lives. So yeah, I actually became a real personal trainer because of my entertainment background.
Wow. It's that's all crazy. And it's crazy because I wouldn't have been able to figure that out without you explaining it. But what I like about uh, entertainment intertwined with this terminology of metabolic health, which is one of my goals, as it is yours, to socialize that term, is that it kind of can break down things, maybe make it a little easier to understand. I'm hoping if it's fun, it's easier to motivate people when they enjoy learning. One thing I know for sure, it'll make the learning more memorable. So if I am learning something and it's presented in a way that is easy to remember because it's unique, I think that'll do wonders. And of course, that'll also maybe break down those resistance barriers. So many people who are interested in change, they sometimes have a lot of barriers to change. And if you can present it in a way that's easy to digest, and I get a little chuckle along the way, I think that makes sense. I'm really excited about the potential that your crazy self will be bringing some of that crazy to the world. So I love that, and you're gonna use the primitive post fitness model, and you're gonna try to change it up a little bit. But your philosophy is all about health and wellness, obviously. So talk a little bit more about your philosophy about this whole wellness journey.
Yeah, and that's related to me being an actor and a creative. Is I've been doing all that stuff because I just want to bring joy to people's lives. That's the bottom line, you know? That I want that to be the foundation of why I do what I do and why everyone does what they do. If you don't love it, if you don't enjoy what you're doing, then why are you doing it? I don't want you to be healthy and be miserable while you do it. That's not true health.
Yeah.
So my belief system, kind of my worldview is, what is your why? That's the first thing that I ask my clients is, okay, you're here, we're meeting, we're having a consultation. Why though? And don't tell me it's for the wedding next month or next year. Don't tell me it's because your mom keeps bothering you and she keeps poking you in the belly and says you're fat. Those aren't good whys. They're real whys, but they're not ride or die whys. Let me explain. So I have a 4-step process that I do with my clients. It's just called the 4 essential steps. And the why is number 1. And it has to be equivalent to your best friend. The power that you have, your relationship with your best friend. So we call our besties, at least in my generation, ride or dies. So Dr. Fumi is my ride or die. I can count on her for anything and everything at any time of day or night, no matter where I am or where she's traveling the world. I know that I can count on her. And I use that, I guess, analogy because when I want to make a change in my life, especially around my health, I have to have a reason that's going to keep me grounded through thick and thin. That's going to keep me grounded through challenges, through stress, through the holidays, through loss, through, life. And that doesn't mean that I'm perfect, right? Because I might be somebody's best friend. That doesn't mean I'm perfect. They just know that I'm going to be there for them no matter what. So we have to find and create that why for ourselves so we can get through those struggles, those challenges, those obstacles or barriers. And that's really where I start so I can help my clients on their journey of behavior change.
Yeah, that's amazing. A ride or die. I feel older already. I hear this term, particularly when I talk to my medical assistants. They tend to be, I'm in my 50s, they tend to be in their 20s and 30s, and they say things like they're ride or die. And that makes a lot of sense because if you got somebody that walks with you, somebody that makes your journey easier to sustain, maybe even reduces the stress about you trying to overcome those struggles that are inevitable, I could see how that'll really change your mindset and allow you to kind of move forward without those fears that you normally would have and those doubters. Man, even the people that love you will doubt you and challenge you and say, nah, because they really do it out of love. They just don't realize it's not a good way to show love because they just make you focus on the things that, the what ifs, right? And so ride or die, I need to I don't want to disrespect any of my friends, but I gotta figure out which one of those are my ride or die. I gotta do that. That's gonna be my goal. I'm gonna make that a project for Dr. H to say, who can I say? I mean, obviously I have a wife, but if I have a friend that's gonna be that person, who is that gonna be? So, and speaking of struggle, you know, what are some of the barriers, most common barriers that you see people facing on their journey towards metabolic health, and how do you help them as they face these challenges?
Yeah, so that goes right into my step 2, gather your successes.
Mm,
So in my experience, one of the biggest barriers to success is self-doubt.
mm,
So what I try and do with my clients is help them harness a solid sense of self-efficacy,
mm-hmm,
because this is the foundation that we build upon, that utilizes one's past successes to help you achieve your future goals. Now, around the health, spectrum and the reality of health, there's a lot of different levels or layers, right? People have told me, oh, I've tried dieting, I did this or I did that, I did this, and it never works, it never sticks, I just fail.
mm-hmm,
Or, it's too hard around the holidays, I just can't resist grandma's spice cake or whatever it is. And then I feel guilty and then I just binge or whatever. Everybody has triggers, everybody has just certain dynamics that come out. And so, even if we perceive ourselves as having failed in the past around a health issue, it's okay. What I do is I work with the client to help them find their successes from the past. And it might not have to do anything with health.
mm-hmm,
And that's what kind of pops their bubble when they realize, oh, I was just focusing on all my failures of my health journey. I've
mm,
actually succeeded in other ways in my life that I can use to help me get my steps moving forward around my health journey. So,
mm-hmm,
some people call this a strength-based approach. Uh, some people call it SMART goals. There's a lot of ways, terms, things you can do, but essentially, I'm just helping people gather their successes so they know that they've done hard things before. Therefore, they can do hard things now. And
mm,
in a way, those hard things can become easier if you just look at it, kind of shift it like a 3D object instead of like beginning, middle, end. I kind of view process, or I view life as this 3D sphere. You can be on the sphere at any point of your journey, and it doesn't mean that you're closer or further away from anything. It's all relative.
mm.
So, yeah, gathering your successes to help understand maybe perceived obstacles that aren't necessarily that big of an obstacle. So, changing that narrative, right?
Yeah.
Um, that's kind of where I'm at with that.
This is why I love coaches. There are so many nuggets in the coaching world that people need to hear. And one of the things I heard not long ago is that, and I think I may have heard this from my trainer, but personal growth requires discomfort. Shout out to my trainer, Carly, for asking me to put my hands on that bar and hold on for dear life. She said, just hold on as long as you can. I did about 33 seconds before I had to let go. And then she said, we're going to do this over here, and then we're going to come back and do it again. I said, we're going to do what? So, and then she said, you got to beat the last time. So I think the second time I got up to about, I don't know, somewhere between 35 and 40. And I was so proud of myself. And I look around in that area where I train, and you got people, most of them are older than me, and they're doing really good work. So the first thing I learned from that is, first of all, it don't matter how old you are, it's never too late, right? But the discomfort that comes with trying to improve your health is something you should expect. And unfortunately, you may even have to embrace it. But man, when I walk out of that gym, I feel so proud and so happy that I had a little discomfort. So I love your principles already because they're really speaking to me in a personal way. So going back to your gift of being creative, maybe you can give an example of how your coaching approach as you help people try to make these lifestyle changes enjoyable, sustainable. Where is that creativity coming from? What are you doing to make it an interesting experience for them?
Right. So, first of all, I try and reduce any barriers to getting moving or taking that first step.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't require any equipment
Mm.
if they're coming to me for personal training, like movement, functional training. I also go to my clients. So that eliminates them having
Wow.
to get a gym membership,
That's
having
right.
to pack a bag, having to get in the car, having to sit in traffic, having to go to the gym and be around a bunch of people that they don't know.
That's right.
There's a lot of things that just go away when the service is so intimate, where I just come to you, we use what you have, and my creativity really gets, let's just say creative, when I see your living room or your kitchen. And I just straight up come in and I'm like, I take my shoes off, but I'm like, can I just become one with your living room and kitchen? And they're like, yeah, sure. And I start doing things. They're like, I never thought of doing that before. I'm like, but look, my heart rate's going up because I'm doing modified push-ups on your kitchen counter. Or
Right.
I'm doing dips on the ottoman that I
Right.
could use while I'm watching a movie, if that's my vibe, if that's my style, where like I want to also be distracted or I want to be entertained while I'm doing my movement routine or whatever. And then there are folks who like to be outdoors. So we'll go for a walk and we'll be in the woods and there won't be any equipment. There'll be no bars to do pull-ups on. There'll be, trees, stumps, maybe a bench here or there. And sometimes I'll just say, hey, what can you do with that over there? Show me. And if they're stumped, then I'll be like, okay, I'll try it. And so it's very hands-on experience. I don't have a formula. I think it's really important to listen to what the client already told me as far as like what they like and what they don't like. Because sure, Tony, you probably don't love hanging from a bar, but the level of discomfort is only so much that it's not like going to make you run screaming in the other direction. So sure, there's always compromise. But what I always tell my clients is, if you don't really enjoy this process, whether it's a 30-minute movement routine or a 15-minute movement routine, then it's not going to stick around. And my goal is for us to create together routines that are sustainable habits. And so that's why I don't have one formula. I might have a strategy like my 4 essential steps that I use with everybody, but there's so many different pieces and parts because everybody's individual. And for you might tolerate hanging from a bar for 33 to 36 seconds, and that's okay. But other people, either they physically can't do that because of some limitation, or they're just like, oh, no, it hurts my elbows or my wrists. Okay, then we don't have to do it. Just to be adaptable and to be mindful of everybody's situation is really what's mainly on my mind.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I like about working with a trainer, even in a more structured environment, is she seems to always have a different kind of set, tools in her toolkit in terms of what she asked me to do. And it sounds like you're in a lot of ways taking it to another level in that you're like, let's create some tools. We'll look at our environment and we'll adapt. And I think that makes it very interesting and, again, exciting. And it also will grow a person and make them more creative, because they'll start seeking ways to exercise or to use their environment. There'll come a point where there's no place where you can't at least say that there's a way for me to do these things. So I love that. It's very different and it's very interesting. And another thing that is a question I wanted to discuss with you is, I know you have kind of a food first approach. I know most people in the low carb, keto, carnivore community focus on food. So, it's almost a obvious question, but I want to hear it from a trainer. Why do you emphasize cooking, meal prep, grocery shopping skills as you kind of work with your clients to achieve their health?
Right. Well, the reason is I want my clients to understand the power that food has in their lives and how it can transform their life in every way possible. Not just lose that extra 10, 15 pounds, but, it changes your mind. It changes your mental state. It changes your emotions sometimes, right? We
Mm-hmm.
know if we eat some bag of something with like 50 ingredients that we can't pronounce, I can tell you from firsthand experience, I've had a reaction emotionally to a hyper processed food before. So helping my clients understand that food has to come first, because that will either make or break your sustainability goals, your sustainability process. Like if you want to be at the gym 5 days a week, or if you want to work out at home 3 days a week, and you're eating crap food, your
Mm,
motivation is going to dwindle real fast,
that's
because we
right.
all know when we eat that comfort food
Mm-hmm.
that's loaded with stuff, we don't want to go for a walk after we eat. We want to go crash. We want to go to
That's right.
sleep, right? And that's a symptom. That's a symptom of something that's going on in your body that's saying this isn't right.
Mm,
So I say use food as your premium fuel. We
mm,
don't want poor quality gasoline or the wrong kind of engine oil. We want to fuel our body with optimal ingredients, optimal gasoline, so to speak, so your
that's
mind
right.
and body can be positively affected.
Yeah.
And so you mentioned grocery stores. One of the things I do with folks who really want to learn how to change their cooking habits or their eating habits is, first off, I go to their house, I go into their kitchen, and we empty their entire kitchen.
Mm.
And it might sound extreme, right?
Yeah, with these prices, it
Because
sounds really extreme.
that's money. That's money
Yes,
in
it
your
is.
kitchen.
That's right.
And then we have to have a conversation. Do you want to spend your money going to the doctor fixing stuff that the food caused? Or do you want to spend your money on food that keeps you away from the doctor and away from medical bills?
That's right.
And so we have varying degrees of conversations around that. But if I'm already in your kitchen, like you're ready, you trust me enough to say, hey, we got to get rid of that. And
Mhm.
some folks, they want to donate it. It's okay. Instead of, they just can't throw it out. It's fine.
Mhm.
But basically, we empty the kitchen, and then we go on a grocery store tour. And I guess I skipped a step. We also kind of take inventory of their favorite foods. And that can be meals, or it can just be ingredients like individual vegetables or individual animal proteins. We make a list, and then we go to the grocery store. And what always comes up is at the first, visit with each other at the store, is they're like, oh, this is what I usually buy. And I say, okay, what's in the box?
Mm-hmm.
And they'll say something like, oh, it's sugar free. And it'll be a box of oatmeal.
Mm-hmm.
And so then we have that conversation where, well, it's just oats, right?
Right.
But how do you feel after you eat those oats? And how
Mm-hmm.
hungry do you get after you eat those oats? Is it an hour later, 2 hours later? It's probably not 5 hours later, because the oats just spike your blood sugar and then drop pretty fast. So we get into all these different conversations at the store, and usually it has to do with understanding food labels. So not being distracted by the pretty cover, right? Don't trust a book by its cover, sort of thing.
That's right.
Flipping it over, not just looking at the carb content, the fat, protein, sugar content. That's important, but actually reading the ingredients and knowing what those ingredients are. Because number one, if you don't know what that ingredient is, do you really want to eat it?
Yeah.
So
gotta be careful.
we got to talk about that. And so a lot of times my clients are ready to reduce and simplify. And that's another strategy I have, is just like, let's keep this simple. Okay, being optimally healthy does not have to be expensive. It doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be stressful, right? I mean, I have a client right now. He's like, I don't want any mental overhead of having to think and prep and cook and do all these things for hours and hours on end. Just tell me what to eat. And I'm like, well, I can't prescribe anything. I'm not a dietitian, but I can tell you where the fat is, where the protein is, where the carbs are, and all that stuff. And so he's basically gone carnivore without us saying carnivore, because it's easy and it's satiating.
The easiest
and it's
one. Yeah.
enjoyable.
Yeah. That's right.
So yeah, everybody's different, but the grocery store tour is that next step, and then we come back to the client's home and we cook everything, and we do it all in one day usually. And I try and make whatever we buy at the store enough food for a week, so they can see and experience how, look, you can make all your meals for 7 days in one afternoon. Imagine how much time you're saving the rest of the week, and how much money you're saving the rest of the week when you have all your food ready, waiting for you in the fridge or in the freezer.
Yeah. So. It makes a lot of sense. And the, going back to us trying to talk about metabolic health, and metabolic health can be achieved with adequate sleep and reduced stress and movement, which is what a trainer is going to really help you with. But man, your diet is going to be a huge trigger. So I'm happy you start with that. And I think about my patients who eat the oatmeal. I did a recent video comparing oatmeal to a Snickers bar, and I suggested in the video the protein and the fat in the Snickers bar may blunt the spike of the Snickers bar to the point where the oatmeal caused a bigger spike, which is something that's shocking when we've been told for years that the oatmeal's the health food. Well, Snickers bar is not the health food either, but to imagine a Snickers bar would spike your blood sugar less is just a weird concept. But the food, if we level our blood sugars, we're going to be more functional and we'll be able to do better. If we eat the right food, our hormones are going to be better. So we regulate our hormones better. We'll have less body inflammation if we eat the right foods. But for a guy like me who had irritable bowel, my gut health is going to be a lot easier going, and my energy level. So all of these things are better by eating well. And like you said, it's like that's a small price to pay when you look at the rewards you receive. And I just think if we can get more people to do the experiment, with support, that's going to be putting more people in a better place. Now, you also have done coaching in person and virtually. And when you're in person versus virtual, what's the difference in terms of the impact it has on the person you're coaching?
Well, I would say for people who prefer the in-person, there's something about having another human next to them.
Mm-hmm.
There's a connection there, right? I feel like the community, the sense of community is a bit stronger.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a huge value of mine, is making sure that people feel supported and that they're not alone in this journey.
Mm-hmm.
So doing one-on-one training or food coaching in person, it makes it very real. Like, we're going to the store together. Their muscle memory is going to develop from a positive experience at the grocery store, right? It'll help decrease overwhelm next time they go because they had a positive experience with me. You know Dr. Jonah Flint. She's a badass. She's from
Mm-hmm.
Seattle. I love her, and I want to give her a shout out because I think that I became a personal trainer partially because of her.
Nice.
She I won't get too sidetracked, but she talks a lot about mirror neurons,
Mm-hmm.
and I am all about helping those mirror neurons retrain themselves to do
Mm-hmm.
things that benefit me, right? So when I have a positive experience going to the grocery store with another human, I can use that as past success. I can build my self-efficacy of like, hey, I did that before. I can do it again. So I
Like
think
that.
that's a huge um, benefit of doing in-person coaching.
Yeah. I definitely feel just like when I met you guys, you and Dr. Fumi, when we met, there was some energy that was in the room. And being able to feel that energy is inspiring. So if I can be around um, energetic people who inspire me, and my neurons that help me understand that and feel that are firing when I'm around that kind of person, then of course that makes sense. And I may do the opposite when I'm around people who don't or who
Mm-hmm.
are not adding value to my life. So I just love the idea of, again, when people are able to get in front of people and do it that way, they absolutely should. I know pandemic has kind of shifted some people towards virtual, but whenever you can actually have that kind of relationship, it's important. It's just like this idea of community. Having a community that's there to support you whenever possible is better than a community that's not. And but there's also the culture that we live in, and there are cultures that can support your goals, and there's cultures that won't. And I think this is true for all cultures. So when you're thinking about the role of culture, community, in helping us achieve long-term goals, how do you, foster this in your work? Because I know if I come from a culture where exercise is not a thing, or even paying for a coach or a trainer is not a thing, I have to overcome that because my culture says that's not a norm. Just like certain cultures say, we don't talk to therapists, you just deal with it. So, how do you reconcile all of that?
Yeah. So I do an inventory with my client about their culture. If their culture is more specific than your just generic American culture, maybe they grew up. I grew up in a polyculture, And so I was influenced by several different cultures that were very influential in my childhood. And oftentimes people are told to pick one, right? And I don't think that's necessary. So I do an inventory of culture with my clients,
Mm-hmm.
and I ask, what traditions do you value in your culture? And I'll give you an example. I have a lot of extended family and relatives in Native American communities.
Mm-hmm.
And fry bread is something that's traditional in a lot of communities. Despite the fact that it's actually a colonial food that was brought in by the Europeans, it's become a tradition at different ceremonies, celebrations. And so, how do you talk about a food like that that emotionally has value to someone, but maybe physiologically, biologically, it doesn't really benefit us? So, I don't want to demonize that tradition. I especially don't want to make anyone feel bad for having uh, a good feeling from a tradition. And I don't want to take that away. So we talk about modifying traditions. So, family holiday time, birthday, ceremony. Um, how do you politely decline? Or how do you politely participate? And how do you walk through life in a way that isn't constantly like, oh, I have to do this, or oh, I can't do that, or I should do this, when your culture is maybe telling you one thing or another, depending on the day, depending on the culture, right? I grew up with several cultures in my childhood, and they didn't always get along.
Mm-hmm.
So just being very transparent with each other, like my client and myself, in honoring traditions, because they're an integral part of our lives as communal beings, right? And we discuss the power of other things too, like access, financial wealth or lack thereof, work culture, plus intergenerational dynamics, and how all of these things influence our lifestyles and our choices. So again, helping people understand that they have a choice and they can say no if they feel that it benefits them. And then we work on, how do we have those conversations with our families? It's not that we want to offend anyone who's trying to uphold this tradition or keep it
Mm-hmm.
in the family, right? We're not trying to offend anyone, and we're not trying to talk down to anyone and say, oh,
That's right.
I've learned, I'm now better than you, and I'm enlightened, and I don't eat that anymore. Like, it's a very delicate process.
That's right.
So I think that culture, that's my fourth pillar in my four essential steps, is how do we rebuild culture? Because every culture, if we're talking about the United States of America, every culture within this culture has value. And every culture also offers things that probably aren't the best for our health,
Mm.
our mental health, our physical health. So it's just a continual journey of navigating together and supporting each other, because we can all relate with grandma's spice cake, right? Or
No
cherry
doubt.
pie or fry bread or whatever it is. We can all relate to that feeling. And so it's just a matter of being honest about it, and
Mm.
developing healthy boundaries and whatever is best for you.
Yeah. And I think with the holidays coming up, it's a great talking point because we'll all be facing that no matter how long you've been on this metabolic journey, whether you're just getting started or you've been doing it for years. every holiday creates a challenge, and I do give my patients grace and say, let's decide what we're going to do. Are we going to actually indulge a little bit? And if so, do we have to adjust medicines, or do we make a decision to modify what's in front of you so that it aligns with your goals, particularly if it's a low carb goal? So I think it's good to I think anything in life requires just pausing just long enough to just think about what you're going to do, how you're going to plan, how you're going to survive. And just that pause is enough to help us make better decisions. I read a book recently that just talked about when you're in those moments of trauma or struggle, it's best to pause before you act on it, um, instead of just acting. So just pausing and thinking about what you want to do is probably enough to lead you towards the better decision that you would have otherwise not made. So one of the things I found out when I was researching you a little bit in preparation for this conversation was you actually moved to an island. And I want you to share where you moved, and I want you to share, how did this impact how you view wellness, and any impact it's had on your work since you've made that move? Because I'm a Chicago boy, and I don't mess around with islands too much, but unless I'm on vacation. But so, what's your story when it comes to that?
Yeah, well, I would say, honestly, I moved to the island for my mental health. I grew up in the suburbs, but I spent I would say I'm a city girl for the most part,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
as far as how I was raised. Now, I've traveled a lot. I've lived in other places that are not the city, but the lifestyle that I've led for the most part over the last 10 years running my entertainment business was based in the city, and it needed the city to survive. And through the pandemic and reflection and process and all that, I knew that I wanted to change my pace of life. And I knew that I didn't want to do all the same things that I was doing in my entertainment company. And as you know, I got certified as a personal trainer. So in order for me to give that more energy, I have to make decisions about where and how I spend my time. And so I could say I had it all planned out, but I didn't. I ended up here on the island for a lot of reasons, but I look back on the process and I really got what I wanted. And I said it was for my mental health. And that's layered, right? So part of my mental
Mm-hmm.
health is not sitting in traffic, going into the city 5 times a week. And it's not that I commuted to a day job, right? I'm self-employed, but for networking events, for gigs, for errands, getting costumes, getting makeup, meeting up with performers, all that stuff. So just the fact that I'm on an island now, I feel like I have to better plan my trips into the city. And now that I'm here, I don't want to leave all the time. So I'm now driving less, even though people think, oh, God, you have to drive so much. You live on an island, you have to take the ferry. I actually drive less. When I am in traffic, it's like, I'm doing this today. Because before it was like, I do this 5 times a week, 10 times a week, whatever. And so my tolerance was very low. Now I don't even feel like I'm tolerating it. There's just this other sort of narrative that's going on. The ferry, the lines, and there's actually a coffee company here, and one of their signature coffee flavors or whatever is I think it's called the Ferry Line Blues, Because, yeah, sometimes you get stuck in the ferry line or the ferry doesn't come. That has all happened to me so far, and I've only been here a few months.
Mm-hmm.
But when I'm in that situation, I say, well, I chose this life,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm okay with it. And it's like the amount of stress of just inhabiting space is so much less now. And although I do live in a neighborhood, it's not like I bought this huge property and I have no neighbors. I have neighbors very close by,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't hear the freeway in the distance. I can actually hear the train from across the water at my old house,
Wow.
which is very comforting and soothing. And then I basically hear the wind in the trees because we have a lot of evergreens. And I can walk down to the beach from my house without getting in a car. I can walk in the woods. There are deer that pass my yard every day, multiple times a day. There's so many benefits.
Mm.
And it's also pushed me to dedicate more time to developing my health and wellness business, because there are a lot of folks on the island who don't go to the gym, don't want to go to the gym, don't have
Mm.
access to the gym because it's a small rural community. And bam, like here I am, I show up, I'm like, I'll just come to your house
Yeah,
and we can do the thing together. And so,
that's right.
in a way, there's a lot of opportunity here to help people. Even though
That's
it's a
right.
small community, there's also older folks who tend to be ready and really motivated to make changes. So,
Yeah, well, they definitely have life experience and they know that they have to earn the second half of their lives if they're going to still be here. They have to kind of earn it a little bit where we kind of cruising when we're younger, assuming that we don't. But I really appreciate you even being in that environment so you can kind of help those around you. And where's that island located?
it is called Whidbey Island, and it
Hmm.
is maybe 20 miles ish north of Seattle.
Okay, cool. So just to provide perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So they probably don't have a lot of people who have training in low carb, high fat, ketogenic diet. Do you have training in that? So um, obviously, you're doing a lot of physical coaching, and it sounds like you incorporate that training into your coaching process. So how do you do that? Obviously,
Yeah,
you go to
so,
the grocery store, but
mm-hmm.
what else do you do?
Yeah, well, everything changes the more I work with clients, the more I refine my own process and what I do
Hmm.
and what I say. So a lot of people have come to me and said, I need to work out, I need to get in shape, I need to lose 20
Right.
pounds. And then during our consultation, by the end of it, pretty much 9 times out of 10, and the only reason it's nine is because this one client had already been working with uh, her PCP, who's low
Hmm.
carb, and was
Cool.
helping her with the food. But basically, everybody else realizes that food is more of an issue than working out. That they either have an addiction to certain foods or food additives, or they have shame around their relationship with food, and that's way more of an issue than just like doing jumping jacks or pumping iron, right? Like, and so we kind of shift and we kind of ask different questions. It's like, okay, instead of putting together a movement routine,
Hmm.
let's put together a food routine. And so I think that I'm very sensitive or mindful um, about offering ideas to people. On my website, I am very explicit that I do not subscribe or stick to myself one dietary pattern.
Yep.
I don't think there is a one size fits all approach. And so what, if anything, if I'm going to tell you anything as a client, I'm going to say reduce your refined carbohydrates and refined sugars.
Yeah.
And what does that mean? That means any refined grains, that could include flours, right?
Yeah.
And any added sugars.
Yeah.
So I try and simplify lists, right? I want that list to be two things: refined carbs and refined sugars. Of course, in reality, it's like 10,000 things.
Right.
But I want folks to minimize their overwhelm and understand that we can simplify our daily living and our habits by focusing on what a lot of people say, regardless of their stance on a certain dietary pattern: whole foods.
That's right.
Does the food that you're eating look like the food it was when it was growing?
That's right.
Now, of course, a steak doesn't look like a
Right.
cow, but and it is packaged, right? So
That's
I'm
right.
learning. Like, I don't even know if I can't say packaged foods because meat is packaged, right?
That's right.
So I just try and be flexible, and I try not to get stuck on labels or categories or grams even, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
we talk
That's
about
right.
grams of
That's right.
carbohydrate per day.
That's right.
And then keto gets a bad rap, and it gets confusing because people are like, well, I'm keto, but I'm not in ketosis, so I guess I'm
Mm-hmm.
not keto. And then it's just, I'm trying to make life easier, not more
Yeah.
difficult.
Yeah.
And some
Yeah.
folks, they really like to get into the research,
Well, and
and
that's okay.
that's okay.
That's okay. That's okay
But
for them.
I would say most of my clients are just like, can you help make my life easier, please? And
Yeah. I love
that's
that.
what I like to do.
Well, I like that, and we do want to keep things simple. Again, I'm a carnivore, so it's very simple, but it's not for everybody, and people will hear me message that over and over again, and we have other people in our influencer space, which is what you guys are becoming, who have a little bit more of a, you know, don't eat anything that is not alive once, or wasn't didn't have a mama. But I just don't think that's the right message. Metabolic health can be achieved many ways, and I think that as long as we're willing to allow people to decide what that's going to look like for them with some coaching, and obviously when they struggle, we try to problem solve. I think that's the key. So maybe as we're kind of getting close to wrapping up, I would love to hear, do you have an example of a transformation, a memorable transformation that you've seen in a client that really impacted, made you feel good about the work you do?
Well, the first one that comes to mind is a mother of 5. At the time, she was a mother of 3, I think, and has a husband. She was in school for her PhD, and, under a lot of stress, traveled a lot between regions to see family and do school and work, and she came to me to work out, basically get back in shape. And then she was one of the examples of, like, by the end of our hour consultation, she realized that food was more of an issue. So long story short, I did the grocery store tour, I did the food prep with them, gave them some ideas to help feed a large family on a budget and, with not a lot of extra time, and, let them go on their way. And I don't know how many months later it was, but I remember seeing her posting on social media a video of her detoxing from sugar, which I never told her to do. I just did what I said I'd do, how to read ingredients, how to, stick to fewer ingredients or single ingredient foods to create a meal, things like that. And I remember seeing the post, and she looked miserable, but she was documenting publicly this process that was probably one of the most difficult things she had to do personally for herself in her life. And I think it was like day 1, day 2, day 3. And she had these splitting headaches, and she was exhausted and just felt terrible. And I just remember seeing that. And although she was suffering, right, it's not like I was enjoying watching her detox off of sugar. But I was like, man, maybe I influenced that choice. Maybe something I said or did helped her do the really, really hard work. And I don't know if she's still sugar-free. Like, it doesn't matter. The fact that she was vulnerable enough, one, to try it, two, to share it with the whole world, to me was a success. Because, sugar is a beast. And it's not easy. I don't care who you are, Dad. My dad even said, we asked him, actually, we asked you for our first episode. Remember, we asked you guys to define metabolic health. So we did that, and then we did another question series where we said, define your relationship to sugar in 5 words or less. And love you, Dad. He said, controlled but still crave sometimes. And he's keto, like he's got it all under control, right? But he acknowledged that it's still there. It's like still there, tapping him on the shoulder.
That's right.
Yet he's a successful, healthy person. Like, he's turned
That's
around
right.
his metabolic conditions. So I think just knowing that we all are imperfect humans, and we're all just trying to do our best, that
I
it's just,
love it.
yeah.
I just love that. I mean, we just have to say it over and over again so people will not look at us as different than them. That it's always going to be a challenge. And then my hope is that for those who are able to have a moment for the holidays and they don't have a processed food addiction, as Dr. Joan Iflin would say, and they can tolerate some of these things, then tolerate it. But just know that for some people, that's a rabbit hole they don't want to go down. So you have to really look in the mirror and decide who are you. And if you're the person who can tolerate it, then have a moment of indulgence. But it'll always be a tricky little thing to play with because you're always going to be vulnerable because these are some of the most addictive substances on the planet. Sugar ranks really high with all those addictive drugs and other items that make us want to go back. So I really hope someone who is hearing us today understands that they are no different than everybody else. We all struggle.
Mm-hmm.
And those who get back up and start again are the ones who will find the kind of success we all desire. So as you think about protecting your nest over the next 12 months, rather it's nutrition, exercise, less stress, more sleep, your thoughts, trauma recovery, relationships, avoiding things that harm you, organisms and pollutants, and of course your emotions, protecting those and having life experiences that serve you. Where do you think you're going to give extra attention for the next 12 months?
Well, I'm already on a path that I've committed to around my thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
And as a creative, my brain has a real hard time slowing down and just being. So I am working on focusing on one thing at a time, and allowing myself to let go of the $1,000,000 ideas or the next video or the next project, or, allowing myself to trust that I have ample amounts of resources, creative ideas. They will always be there no matter what. But just trusting that I can let go of that for a moment. Many moments in the day is my goal, right? To just be here and focused on this.
Yeah, I like that. There's so many tools out there that help us in this regard. One of the things I had learned about was something called the REST method, and it just helps you to, relax, you know, regulate your emotions, self-care, and managing your thoughts. But that's something, someone can look up. But, but just having tools. And what I love about a coach, a trainer, a therapist is that they give you tools so that when you're in moments when you need a tool, you'll have something in your toolkit. So hopefully some of what we talked about today provided that for those who checked us out. As we wrap up, I want you to remind people how they can find you, the YouTube channel, and of course your website. So share that for my audience.
Yeah. So my podcast is on YouTube. It's called The Magic of Metabolic Health. My co-host is Dr. Fumi Awayami. And then my personal training and health coaching website is primitivepulsefitness.com, and also on Instagram, Primitive Pulse Fitness.
Excellent. So as we wrap up, I want to thank you for bringing the energy from our first meeting till now. Thank you for being, I think it was episode number 5 when I joined you on your channel. So I'll make sure to have a link to that episode if they want to hear my mouth running some more, because I was on the other end of this conversation. And I just want to thank you just for sharing a perspective. I didn't know how this conversation was going to go, but it was very insightful and interesting. And this is a great way to get to know somebody. And I've gotten to know you in this hour, probably more than the other interactions we've had. So I really appreciate that. And thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Tony. I love your consistent effort in building community everywhere you go. So I'm very grateful to be part of that.
Well, thank you. And as we wrap up, I want to say that I appreciate your creative approach and dedication as well to helping, break down barriers to health. It's really inspiring to know people have someone like you who can help guide them. So thank you for sharing your wisdom, your passion, practical tips, of course, crazy tips, in the kitchen, in the living room, in the forest, we'll take them. They're crazy, but we'll go with it. And for those who check this out, if you're ready to take the next step towards optimizing your health, I encourage you to connect with Amelia and at Primitive Pulse Fitness. Of course, we'll have a link to that. And of course, check out her website. Check out the YouTube channel, The Magic of Metabolic Health. It's magical, guys. You can heal by putting something different on your fork. And achieving metabolic health is not just about, what you eat. It's about making sure your mind, your body, and even the community you live in are thriving. So for those who check this out, I always appreciate you coming to the podcast. Make sure if you're checking this out to comment if anything resonated with you. If you're new to the YouTube channel and you're checking us out on the YouTube channel, subscribe so you won't miss future episodes. And I'll continue to do my best to bring great guests like today's guest to this channel. So until we have another episode of the Protecting Your Nest podcast. Continue to be safe, be well, and continue to protect your nest.